Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic co-host right here,
Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people, and welcome to 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sedan. Well, Adam, let's jump right into the day because I know we got a long session to discuss what is going on.
I know
in the
there
world.
is so much befuddleations happening.
Yes.
First, let us take a moment to let our listeners and our viewers know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here, not only giving you fantastic music, but we're here to be your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. We're live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM and on the web at dwobmusicradio.com. All right, let's jump right into it. You know, recently we were talking about net neutrality. That's the rule that all the data that's transmitted over the internet is created equally, is treated equally. So that means that up until now, you couldn't do a few things. If you were a company signed to an internet service provider, you couldn't block your competitor's data transmission. Nor could you slow down the competitor's transmission. Nor could you pay for prioritization. So the data has to be transmitted in real time. The moment you hit click, it transmits. Not because you paid, puts you ahead of the line in terms of the data, right? Well, all of that is being in question. What I just gave you is a summary of what's called the free open internet order, right? So right now what's happened, everything is changing hands in the U.S. With the new administration comes new rules.
Yes, indeed.
And new rules to begin with is this new FCC chair by the name of Ajit Pai, P-A-I. This individual is a Trump appointee, in which case he is a foe to net neutrality. Beyond this, he's already getting cracking and moving. You see, the predecessor, which was a gentleman by the name of Tom Wheeler, he was a Democrat, and before he left, he announced that they were in support of what's called the Lifeline program.
Okay.
You see, if you are lower income and poor, there is a harder time for you to access broadband internet, okay? So what the FCC stepped in and recommended what was called the Lifeline program. They had internet service provider sign up for the Lifeline program, and it basically issues poor income families a credit per month, $9.25 a month you're given as a credit in order to help you access internet. In particular, this was really helpful. This would have been really helpful towards school districts and lower income neighborhoods, et cetera. So our new FCC chair, Ajit Pai, has reversed Mr. Wheeler's decision on this. In other words, that Lifeline program that would have been eligible, 13 million Americans would have been eligible for this program. Now it's dead in the water.
Now, is he coming up with a replacement?
No. And the other thing the reason why we're bringing this up, and I'll talk about it later on, there's another thing that we need to be aware of that's going to affect poor communities, middle class and down. And that is this thing called USF. That's called the Universal Service Fund for phone. Forget internet. Let's go back to the phone. What carriers started to realize that in rural and really offshoot areas, they had a harder time accessing quality phone services. So they created a USF, and they essentially mandated that each customer pay a little bit extra, and from that pool, that allowed to build infrastructure and provide better access to rural communities, called a USF. Well, now they've been debating up until now this idea that the USF could be applied to broadband internet now, because they figured if every person that buys their internet pays a scotch more, all that could be pulled together to offer poor communities internet access, rural communities internet access, etc.
Well, a scotch more internet access
pennies.
It may be pennies, but I'm talking about why can't they take it off of what these internet companies already charge? These internet companies charge phenomenal prices for you to have their internet services, and especially if their data overage. Verizon, yes, I'm calling you out.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. That USF that was applied to the phone has yet to be applied to internet service, so it's not even a debate they're even having. There was talk that with Mr. Wheeler as the head of the FCC that perhaps they would be discussing this adoptability for USF from phone to internet. But now with Mr. Pai, Ajit Pai, as the new FCC chair, you know, if he's going to killed the Lifeline program, he's definitely going to kill any idea for USF being applied to the internet. You know, so those are the things we need to think about. And now when we talked recently about net neutrality, you know, Mr. Pi is in favor of breaking that whole idea now. Even recently on the freedomradiohour.com website, we just posted an article about how he's already up and moving, giving a free pass to AT&T and Verizon to begin dismantling this idea of equality amongst data. What does that mean for you and I? Let's take a break. We'll talk about that and more right here on the Freedom Radio Hour.
91.6 FM, y'all.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people, and welcome back to 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sedan. I'm Eddie Nicholas, and I'm sitting here with my fantastic co-host, the one and only Mr.
Adam Cruz, and we're live and direct right here on the Freedom Radio Hour, your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. We're also on the web at dwalmusicradio.com. Thanks for listening. So before we broke, we were breaking down the latest goings-on with the FCC. Here in the States, that's the Federal Communications Commission. It was run at one point by a Democrat, and they were trying to advocate for providing funds for poorer communities to have internet access. That now has been squashed because the new FCC chair, Mr. Ajit Pai, has other plans for the FCC. We also talked about this problem around net neutrality and how in limbo it is right now. You see, net neutrality treats all data equally, but with the new chair comes new ideas. Case in point, he has already given a free pass to companies like Verizon and AT&T and others to go ahead and offer sort of tier programs. You see, if you kill the idea of net neutrality, then these companies can engage in blocking, throttling, paid prioritization. That's blocking the competition or making or monopolizing services so that most people will naturally gravitate towards one service or another. And that's the biggest thing right now. Like T-Mobile, they're saying is offering this binge on unlimited free data. So you pay a certain amount and then you could have unlimited free data. But net neutrality advocates are against that because you see, once you start offering unlimited data plans like that, in a wider sense, now you're making monopolies because why would you sign with any other company but, say, T-Mobile if they're the only company that's offering the free data planning?
That's why I made mention of Verizon.
Yes, talk about it.
Because with the Verizon, they have no free data plan.
Correct.
So after you go over a certain amount of data, you're then being prompted to pay for more data, more data, more data, more data. To you sometimes, you know, and I'll admit I was a culprit. I made my mistake with that, where you're looking at your bill and you're saying, well, why has my bill jumped all these hundreds of dollars? And then when you look at it, it's for data.
Right, and then the companies are trying to upsell you to say, well, you should buy a more per month plan so that you could cover those data. But even
then when you get that more per month plan, you still find that you are still being excess data charges in those plans. And not only that, Verizon and these other companies, I'm not sure about AT&T, but I know at one time, and they still are, you paid extra money for what they call the quantum package.
What's that?
Well, quantum, where your information comes to you quicker.
See? And see, this is why
and you pay for
the
that.
debate around net neutrality becomes really interesting because as you see here, there's even two sides of the coin around the argument. On the one side, I do want all data to be treated equally because I don't want for companies to pay their way to have more quicker transfer. I want us all to have the same. Why? Because I feel in my mind, and I'm speculating here, that after a while, data will have like a sort of bottleneck feel, where everybody will be trying to get all their data from these particular avenues because that'll offer the better deal. Like the T-Mobile with the free free data plan. Of course, more people might go towards that plan, which is what regulators are saying is a problem. They're saying, look, T-Mobile, you shouldn't have been doing that. So they asked the FCC to they asked for official inquiries around T-Mobile and other that have this binge free data type plan. And right now, just this week, Mr. Pai, Ajit Pai, the new appointee, has decided to drop all inquiries about whether companies like T-Mobile's and others are monopolizing themselves
They
by
all should
creating
be free.
the free data plans
They
like
all
that.
should be free. And, hopefully the rest of them will follow what T-Mobile
But be
is
careful.
doing.
Be careful, because when we were just talking earlier about this idea that poorer communities have a much harder time accessing broadband services, what do you think is going to happen if net neutrality falls to the wayside?
They won't have service.
Or the service will be so slow that it's almost not advantageous to even access the
But it's
service.
like the old little phone hookup.
Yes, you remember that? I remember I used to make sure nobody was on the phone. I used to hook up the phone, and then I used to make that weird fax sound. And then it would finally act. And then don't let somebody call while you're on the phone.
Interrupted the service.
Yes. And then we're going to be getting to a place now where now, depending on how much money you have, it will
Exactly.
dictate how fast your internet connection could be. And on the surface, you think, well, duh, that's kind of already happening. Aren't there already tiers with respect to a service? Yes and no. Initially, there used to be, when broadband first came out, do you remember broadband was like pay more and then you get broadband, or you could keep the dial-up service, And now there's no such thing as dial-up, so that is the plan. The broadband is the plan. So when you're in a rural community, or if you're in a low-income community, these things become really acute. These problems become really important to you in those communities, especially. Let's take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about 5 quick things that are happening in terms of the European music copyright laws and how it affects us here in the music business. We'll talk about it where?
91.6 FM, the heartbeat of today.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio, 91.6 FM, and on the web at dwildmusicradio.com. You're deep in the zone right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. I'm sitting here with my fantastic co-host, Mr.
Eddie Nicholas, and I'm, just engulfing and taking all of this wonderful information in that Adam is sharing with us. So, what are our European friends and allies doing across the pond?
Well, there's 5 things to look out for that some we have already covered on this episode, but it's good to get a nice refresher. All right, so the first thing is we're talking about the latest regarding Safe Harbor. You see, YouTube is one of the biggest websites there is for streaming content for free. And so Europe, noticing this, is really trying to deal with YouTube's content ID system. You see, here in the States, as long as YouTube and other websites like YouTube have a system that removes the content the moment that an infringement is claimed, a copyright infringement that is, they have a system called Content ID that goes bloop and removes the content.
And sends you a nice little message, too.
Yes. And just as long as YouTube and other websites offer that system and allow it to function like it does, they escape any lawsuits against anybody who says, hey, you copyright infringed upon me. I'm going to sue you for damages. You can sue the person who's uploaded it, but you can't sue YouTube. That's what Safe Harbor says. Well, in Europe, that's a big problem because they've noticed a few things. Number one, they want YouTube to do more in terms of preemptive strike. What do you mean? Right now, YouTube lets you put up the infringed material until somebody flags it and then it gets removed. But Europe's saying, why can't you do it ahead of time? That means use that content ID system so that when I'm uploading, if I'm a user, if I upload infringed material, it won't let me.
But they do.
It'll let you put it live. And then it'll remove it. So Europe's saying do it the other way.
Like Facebook.
And Facebook, too, is in the process of trying to deal with this because they want all that coin that comes with advertising on the back of that music and video content, right? So Europe is dealing with that, Safe Harbor. The second thing they're dealing with is called Performer ER, Performer Equity Remuneration. These words kill me. Basically, that's a fancy way of saying, look, if
Make sure the artists get their buddy.
That's exactly what it says. It says, make sure in an equal way that you treat the featured artist as you do the session musician, the person who, any performer on the record, half of the copyright goes to the label and half of it goes to this pool of people that include featured artists, session musicians, keyboardists, other folks like that on the project. So what Performer ER says is that you ought to treat those individuals and they should be able to get a performance right from that, even though they don't have a deal with the label or nothing. It's like their own income. And now this performer right has grown in Europe to the tune of 14% of the money coming in. So this has become quite a bit of a income for independent musicians and such that don't have deals, but they are enjoying this performance right. But this is being in question in Europe. They're trying to figure out, how do you deal with performance rights, especially because, if you're a featured artist, you're not necessarily going to be keen on sharing your own 50% as much with all of these musicians. So you got to be aware of that. And if you're a session musician, you want to work with artists that are willing to share their 50%, because you sure enough are not getting that 50 from the label. They're not going to give it to you. You have to share it with your featured artists and others. So this is going to be another thing. That's the second. The third is this thing called reversing rights. So you see, Duran Duran, one of the biggest 80s bands, they're out of the UK, out of England, and they had to deal with the record label. They gave away their copyrights as per the deal.
Like so many of our artists do.
And it's for the lifetime of the copyright, right?
Now, what is the lifetime here in the States?
It's 35 years, from what I understand. And England, I don't know the life of the copyright, but I think it might be the life, like as in your life, how long you are, how long you live, or what have you. Or your ancestors might renew the copyright, in which case your offspring.
But shouldn't they use that? What is that fabulous word? In perpetuity?
In perpetuity.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what Duran Duran is trying to do is reverse the copyright ownership back to them, especially when you consider a group like Duran Duran. They want to get access to their very first album and beyond, which is right around this 35-year period. So the English law says you can't, Duran Duran, because you assigned your copyright away to the label.
Now, that's kind of reminiscent of Victor Willis from the group Village People.
Yes. Do you remember that? Talk about that.
I can definitely see Duran Duran using that case as one, in their case against the record label or whoever their owner is. In his case, he was one of the co-writers of In the Navy, YMCA, and all of that. And in the 70s, when this was going on, somehow he signed away his rights or his ownership to those writings of that song.
Right.
Well, to cut it short, years later, he went back, he sued the other co-writers that supposedly co-wrote those songs with him, and he was able to win back millions and millions of dollars. And again,
and a share of the copyright.
And again with if it would not Bootsy Collins, one of those funk guys. Won $1 million lawsuit back to his copyrights.
Like George Clinton or someone?
Not George Clinton. What's the other one? Oh my goodness, he was just on Unsung. If you haven't seen Unsung, please do watch that.
Okay. Jump in if you remember.
Yeah, I will.
But essentially, so going back to Europe, they're dealing with these 5 things. That's this reversal rights we were talking about. That's the third item. The other thing,
your ownership.
Yes. So what Duran Duran is saying is, okay, you have English law, but if we go and fight for reversal of our copyright in, say, America, what does that look like? So in England, they struck it down and say you lose. But just today and yesterday, I think they just reported that they have been granted the green light to appeal it. That means Duran Duran will be going back to the courts to say reconsider it. And also they're trying to see what they can do to reverse course in other countries. I think that's important. Another thing that we've talked about here is that consent decree. We're going to break down more of what that is in another episode. But that's essentially trying to figure out how gosh, I'm trying to get the right words and it escapes me, but I will have to cover it in more detail.
And again, with what you were just saying, with the way that everybody's so connected through technology, there can be a possible way where all of that is one equal fee all across the board. Everybody's trying to always diplomatically split up things so many different types of ways, and every country has a different policy. There needs to be one policy, like what do you call it? Like a UN of that type of stuff.
But I think it's interesting because I think that's precisely the problem. On the one hand, you think, yes, let's streamline and have these sort of one-size-fits-all interfaces for content management, for royalty management. But as you see, even when it comes to performance rights in an earlier segment, they can't even agree on where to get licenses from. This idea of 100% licensing versus fractional, that was the other point I was bringing up. Europe is trying to figure out, right now you have this idea where if I'm a club or a bar and I have to get licensed music played in my establishment, I go to a performance rights society like a BMI or an ASCAP or CSAC, and I ask for the right to be able to play that music in my establishment. What licensing says is I go to BMI, I get granted the license, and I play the music. What fractional license is I have to go to not just BMI, but all the societies where the co-writers of that song are. So that's a lot more paperwork. So 100% licensing versus fractional licensing. These are the debates that they're trying to figure out in Europe. And why does this and the FCC and all this have to do with us here in the States, and especially in the music business? Well, because we talked ad nauseum about how the future of music is about streaming media. Not only music, but film and TV. All of our gadgetry and such. You're going to need an internet connection for all of it. Okay? So when you're talking about if you're in a low-income community, in a rural community, all of this stuff becomes ever important in order to keep your pulse on what's happening in the world at large. So if you can imagine, if you can't afford it, or the FCC makes it so that one service requires you to pay more for the same access as another because of where you live, this is a really big problem. So what's the call to action? Call your members of Congress and let your voice be heard.
Yes.
Search up the causes that are important to
Or
you.
members of parliament.
Yes, thank you. Members of parliament or members of government officials that are in where you live, and fight and let your voice be heard right now about things like net neutrality, access to internet, access to quality education, access to quality materials. You want to be able to fight for everything that you believe in. And I think that's the biggest call to action, whether you're here or around the globe.
Exactly.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Freedom Radio Hour. Definitely make it your business to visit our website at freedomradiohour.com and post a comment under everything we've got going. We want to hear from you. Definitely download our free app. Visit Google Play, search out Freedom Radio Hour, or within the iTunes App Store. And make sure to check out my man, EddieNicholas.com, for his wonderful, wonderful music. And yours truly, Adam Cruz, at DJ Adam Cruz for more of mine. Thank you so much for tuning in. Capital Radio 91.6 FM and on the web at dwildmusicradio.com.
91.6 FM, y'all.
Yes,
Peace and
right.
love.
Peace and love. Have a good weekend and a good week ahead. We'll see you next time.
Oh, yeah, I meant to say the name of the group was Sly and the Family Stone. Dance to the music.
Yeah, you were talking about that Victor Willis. Yeah, and consent.
Victor,
Yep, and consent decree is basically this idea that you have to let the rates court decide the rates in which you license music, not BMI or ASCAP. Why? Because they'll charge a lot of money. So they leave it to the courts to keep that cost down. That's what consent decree says. But all that's going to be in limbo. Stay tuned.
More 91.6 FM.